for Tuesday, October 11. This time I'd like to invite Pastor Lord for invocation. Please stand.
Thank you, sir, council. Lord, as we gather tonight, we're so thankful to you, Lord, that we can meet, that we're not blowed off the map by the wind or washed away by the water. But Lord, yet tonight we pray for those that have lost from the storm. Lord, we just pray your goodness and thank you for those that you're sending to help, Lord God. It brings the light, the truth in your word in Psalms 127, except you keep the watchman rises in vain. And so, Jesus, you said you'd build your church and the gates of hell wouldn't prevail against it. And so, Lord, we just pray that Port Richey would be a part of what you're building, Lord God. We just pray that you would watch over us and keep us, Lord, and help us prevail against all things that would come. We ask to continue tonight even for all the decisions to be made and the expansion of the city and all the business to be done. We continue to cry out for your wisdom, Lord, and we thank you for protection and preparedness of our first responders and the equipment they have, Lord God. We just thank you for them and continue to pray for the staff and the workers, Lord, that they would have just the provision they need. They would have peace and favor in what they do. Lord, we just ask your favor on our city and protection, and we ask it all in Jesus' name.
The United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes, Operations Manager Sally Carey filling in for City Clerk Ashley McDonough. Mayor Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Vice Mayor Tom Kinsella.
Here.
Councilman Tom McClary.
Here.
Councilwoman Linda Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilman Bill Colombo.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager John Dew.
Here. Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve council minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to move on to commentary from the general public. At this time, there's a couple of people signed up, but there's a lot of folks here tonight, so we're going to ask that everyone remain in their 3-minute window based on the amount of people here. I'm going to invite Pastor Leonard Lord first to speak. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Leonard Lord. I pastor over on Leo Kidd Avenue, 8114, and it's just a delight to be with you. First of all, I just want to thank the city and the chief for joining together with the Faith in Blue. We see what's happening across our nation, that we do need to bring our communities together, support those that are in authority, particularly our first responders. Police force, it was in Baltimore. You won't see it on the news, but there's where the pastors went out and got on their knees between the rioters and the police department and stopped the riot going on. So just want to thank the chief being a part of the Faith in Blue, and so the chief was with us. We just enjoyed having you, Chief. Everybody just was thankful with all the churches here in Port Richey Sunday. So we're thankful to that, and that brings about what's in your hand. We tied our fish fry in with Faith in Blue because it is the month of October, and if you look there, we're excited that the officers are going to do the trunk or treat out of their cruisers. And so the children will be able to get blessed from there. We'll be furnishing that with the fish fry. And if you look at it, for those that don't eat fish, we'll have hot dogs and popcorn. And you see, supporting our Port Richey Police Department, you see the Faith in Blue emblem and the fire department. They've been so faithful to be there. So we just really want to thank the city and thank our city manager and all for making it happen and the park. So the information's on here. It's October 29, 11 to 1. The community is invited out. We'll have some, as you see on there, we'll have some music, testimony, prayer for the community and peace and for our officers. And then that brings me to, with the mobile home park, I want to thank, finally we got code enforcement to get with us. So we're over at the Holiday Trailer Park off of Limit Drive. So we've had 2 crews over as well as others going by trying to get things in order there. We've had just real favor. It's been really good. So right now we'll be on there Thursday afternoons until maybe we can get things up in shape and help the people. We've got to pray with some. I set up a grill and fixed for the team, and some in the trailer park came out and ate with us. So that was good. Also, the department with the homeless, we were able to help them. Did find out the lady we helped and got the rooms was seems to kind of working a scam when we were good doing it. So I let the department know, but we did take care of that. I think we wound up getting about 3 nights rooms for her. Just want to thank y'all. It's an honor to work here, and I would like Port Richey, by the blessing of the Lord, just to be nothing but good and helpful to one another. So Lord bless you, and thank you so very much.
Thank you, Pastor Ward. At this time, I'd like to invite Pat Rogers. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is continuation of what Pastor Leonard was talking about. Through our partnership with the city and Elderly Nutrition, Somebody Cares held our annual Care Fest in the community 2 weeks ago. We had over 38 volunteers, completed 19 projects, several ongoing projects, food, water, snacks, supplies for projected donations at a value of over $7,800. We thank you for our continued partnership and look forward to continuing to serve together. And like I said, I was one of the ones that went over and helped work at the little trailer park too. I also want to thank our water department because I called yesterday. My neighbor's water meter was leaking out into the street and nobody was home over there. And the city was very prompt on coming out and taking care of the problem. So that, between them and Public Works, they keep us rolling smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. That's all that signed up, but there's a lot of folks here, so I wanted to see by show of hands if anyone would like to speak, at least during general commentary. Welcome, Mr. Mueller.
Dave Miller, 5439 Blue Point Drive, 34668. I would also like to thank our utility and Waterworks Department for the fine job they did picking things up. I was approached by several neighbors and people through the community and wondering when they'd get to it. I took it upon myself to make some calls, found out what the status was, and was able to get back with those individuals, and they are much appreciative that that's been done, and appreciate these guys doing all the hard work they do. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, would anyone else like to speak? Seeing no hands, we're going to move on to the next item, which is going to be commentary from our city management, and I'm going to invite Mr. Duke to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to report the Olsner Lift Station rehab project is complete. Sal and Richie and I went out and looked at it. You know, if you're interested in city infrastructure, it's a beautiful lift station. Not many of us are in that category, but it looks good. It looks good. We're going through doing some repair work here at City Hall outside. Got a company that's going to work on the lighting outside. Got a number of parking lot lights that are out, so you'll see those guys around here over the next couple of days. I had a chance to meet with the Penny for Pasco PR team as they're ramping up and trying to push the message of what Penny for Pasco, what it does for municipalities, and obviously specifically what it does for Port Richey. So they're obviously interested in the elected, support from the elected. Management side, I'd do whatever I could. This really is a county-wide project that has very direct benefit to operations here at City Hall. Had the opportunity to attend the CAC meeting last week. CAC spent a lot of time in discussion. They will be providing input into the design process for the Cody River Landing project. They were glad to serve in that manner. Several weeks ago, I met with the owner of the property that sits adjacent to the Walmart parking lot. It's a 20-acre property. It was overgrown. It was in pretty rough shape. The owner does not live in the States, so he was in town and had an opportunity to meet with him. He also visited with Chief Robinson and hired a brush cleanup crew and did a lot of work out there, and so that property's looking a lot better. He's 5,000 miles away, but I want to thank him for spending a lot of money to get that cleared up. It's going to make Chief's jobs easier, and so appreciate that effort. The properties that the city owns in the Cody River Landing area, we've got demo quotes received. One of those has been approved. It was under the $10,000 limit. The other one's on your agenda this evening. Assuming you approve it, should have a demo team coming in very soon to get those structures taken down. Update on the smoke test. I think we had 45 leaks in the system we identified with smoke testing this past summer, several months ago. We are down to one leak still yet not repaired. Property owner is aware of it, working on getting that one repaired. So it's been a good project. Every leak we plug in the sewer system keeps rainwater out of the sewer system, and that's good for all of us. So I know the building department, public works are excited because it's time to go do some more smoke testing and find some more leaks. So we did about a quarter of the city. We'll do as soon as I can convince them that it's time to take the next step. We'll do another quarter of the city. But 43 of them were complete, and we've got one. So really appreciate everybody's hard work. And that's been a public-private partnership. Some of the leaks were on the public side, and that's ours. And so Richie and his team have taken care of that for us. I had a citizen request to take a look at the Welcome to Port Richey sign that's northbound on northbound Grand. It was pretty overgrown, and so Richie and his guys went out and got that cleaned up. He sent me pictures that I didn't have time to get them into the packet. It had already gone out, but I'll try to get those in the next council meeting packet. Or you can just drive north on Grand and take a look. I really want to thank all the staff, the PD, fire, public works, utilities, even folks in the building areas. We did everything we could to prepare for Ian and dodged a bullet. But lots of folks worked really hard to be as prepared as we could, and I want to thank the staff that spent some long hours. I think Chief Policastri moved the entire fire station into City Hall. We had guests from the county who were prepared to spend the night here. Just everybody had a lot of work to do, got us prepared. It was a pretty lonely place here as we were waiting for the storm to roll in, just a couple of us. And then turns out the preparations were not necessary, and we were blessed in that manner. Total expenditures are going to be about $15,000. Rachel and her staff have worked real hard to make sure we've got the paperwork in order. FEMA doesn't just hand out checks. They want a document for everything. And so with finance assistants and department heads, we've got records of the time and money that was spent, the supplies that were purchased, and we'll be submitting to FEMA for reimbursement for that. Hurricane kind of wiped out a number of administrative activities, so I've got meetings rescheduled I've got a meet and greet coming up with the new county manager and a couple of his admin staff, so looking forward to that. I have been asked to join the Pasco County Trails Master Planning Group, and so I'll be joining that group. They've got a year to work on their Trails Master Plan. Was pleased to be invited. I didn't solicit that, but I'll go represent the city's interest in that. Also been invited to join the Florida City County Managers Association on their nomination committee, so I'll be serving in that manner as well. Finally, the fun stuff coming up. The 29th of October, we will have a potluck, all-staff potluck here at City Hall, about 11:30, and we'd like to invite all of you, I can't invite the whole city, but those of you who are elected or contracted for city service, you're more than welcome to come join us, bring a potluck, and you may even see some city staff dressed up in their Halloween costumes. That side of the building is already decorated in Halloween. My side probably isn't as extravagant, but if you have time, come join us for a potluck on the 29th. Love to have you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Stand for your questions.
Thank you. If you guys are all right, I wanted to move on to commentary from our board, which we can blend in because we have a very long agenda. And I wanted to open up. I was very impressed by management in terms of how the hurricane preparation was handled and then how the aftermath was handled, even though it didn't necessarily hit us. But we, had the parks open and closed as we were supposed to, everything cleaned up beforehand. I saw utilities out pumping water in places that normally flood. They were cleaning ditches. Our emergency services, police and fire, were prepared, ready, and all the equipment was ready. So I just wanted to thank everybody because there's nothing scarier sitting up here, I don't think, from our end than when you have a storm like that coming through with the coastal city like this. So I appreciate the staff and their efforts, and that's all I have. I'm going to go to our vice mayor now.
I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, on the part seeing the city pulled together and the it was a pleasure to see all this, and I commend you and your departments preparing for that. One thing we can do is just take a look at it as a nice practice run. So anything that we need to improve, now's the time. But again, thank you. One other thing about the penny for Pasco you brought up, how can our city council, our city promote that? We benefited by it tremendously, the city. And I would love to, anything that we can do, if it means a signage, if we're allowed to put it out in front of the city hall, our Facebook, anything we could promote. I'm asking, what can we do? Hopefully there's something we can do to show that the city is behind this.
There's one thing specifically that was asked of me, and that was to basically say it's okay for that person to make contact with council members. They're looking for your endorsement of the Penny for Pasco effort. And so if they have not reached out to you yet, they will be, and I can let them know you're interested in talking to them. The bottom line is it's sales tax money that comes to, our portion comes to the city. And sales taxes are generated not just by those of us that live in the area, but people who are driving through and snowbirds and vacationers and all kinds of folks. So without that sales tax revenue, you're looking at that burden going on to property taxes. So it really does spread the burden out, and folks who don't live here get to help us pay for fire trucks and police cars and public works equipment and a long list of things. So I think helping folks understand that part of the message would be helpful. So I will make contact with the person I talked to last week and let her know that you're interested in visiting with her, because they're in the final push and wanting to talk to you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you. Mr. McClary?
I'll be quick, echoing everyone else's sentiments so far. Great job by city staff, city managers, everything. The communication was great. I saw a real team pull together. It was really comforting to see, and great job just all the way through. And our citizens have seen it and said the same thing. So really a great job all the way around. And also please add me to that same list for the Penny for Pasco.
Will do. Thank you.
Mr. Cornwell?
Several things. Penny for Pasco, I've already picked up a dozen signs to help my neighbors spread around my neighborhood. Mr. Newton and Mr. Matthew, a question to you. Obviously, the city doesn't politic, but it's not necessarily politicking. Potentially, is there a way to have signs available at City Hall that people could pick up? Would that violate?
I presumed you'd ask that question. They passed some laws about it recently, which allowed you to do more than less. Okay, they expanded upon that. I don't think there's any problem. I'll check it with the city supporting it.
Right.
Okay, so that would, I see the county has signs up. And I know-
Yeah, there's an organization, Penny for Pasco.
Yeah,
or
and
something
so I'm
like
trying to
that.
get to the answer. The only issue is, you know, can you spend money to do it? That I don't know.
Well,
But
my
there's
main
there's no problem with signs
My
or
main
anything
thing
like
was
that.
being able to put out to folks, if you want to support and put up a sign in your yard.
You can have them over here. Yeah, I know you can go there. I know, yeah.
If that'd be okay with you, I think that'd be really nice.
Yeah.
Put on
you
the
know.
Facebook page.
Yeah, we can push that out in social media.
I'm 95% sure that's fine. You know, I know the county does. It's not a good way to say it.
Okay.
If it's a problem, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Mr. Duke now.
As, you know, everybody's gonna say everything, I agree with what everybody said with Hurricane Ian. I just would say to the city manager, that impending hurricane was about as good a live fire exercise of your emergency plans as you could, you know, imagine. And I'm sure there was things you learned from that, things that worked well and things that you might want to improve. So you were under the gun. I mean, you always do disaster plan prep, but there's nothing like being under a real disaster to make it work. And that's what you did. And you did an excellent job.
Thank you.
There was a mention of the CAC, which had a presentation and solicited input from business owners and residents on the Cody River Landing project. I would like to see in the future that type of meeting recorded and put up on our YouTube page, because there's a lot of people that are interested. I know a lot of the CAC meetings are pre-road, but that type of meeting is of interest to not only residents, but business owners. And for them to be able to see the presentation and the discussion, I think will be very valuable. I know we broadcast board meetings, we broadcast our city council and CRA meetings, but the only real meetings we ever have out there, we don't broadcast, which is CAC meetings. So just to bring that up. The only one other thing, and I'll let y'all go, on this portion of our show is agenda items 3 and 4. Can we swap those around and put the appointments to BOA at the very first thing? And that's not going to take very long. And then Ms. Sorrell and Mr. Tapp don't necessarily have to stick around if they have other things they'd rather do.
Motion to switch 3 and 4.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
I'm done. Thank you.
Agree with everything about the hurricane, so I do want to address the CAC. I want to thank AIRS for coming and Mr. Dude for coming to the CAC. They're going to get the information to the CAC, and we're going to move forward with helping make those decisions for Cody River Landing. I encourage everybody who would like to come to the meeting, please come. They are not televised right now, but we did make them very public and put it out across Facebook. To the business owners, I reached out to a couple personally as well, to come to the meeting. So I hope they come out more. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to close out commentary from our board. We're going to move on to commentary from boards and committees. Are there any committee heads or board heads that have any announcements? To our consent agenda, looking for a motion and or discussion.
Motion for consent agenda.
Second. Any need for discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
This time, we're going to move on to council business. We're going to start with the appointment of members to boards and committees. I'm going to pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Jenny Sorrell and Mr. Setcap have expressed interest in being on the board. I believe they're both here this evening. If you had questions for them, I would ask for a motion to approve their membership on the board.
To approve Ms. Sorrell and Mr. Kep for both boards.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. At this time, anyone from any commentary from the general public, including Sorrell, anything?
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Cap?
Ms. Rogers? You're the chairwoman.
I would just like to say that I think they'll be a welcome addition to the panel. So I'll be happy the next time we have a meeting to work with them.
Perfect, thank you. Any need for discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations and thank you for your service.
Thank you very much to the both of you. Welcome back,
I
Jack.
knew she couldn't stay away.
I just got my foot in the door.
At this time, we're going to move on to the Duke Energy presentation with the question and answer session. I'm going to pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jeff Baker and his team are here. I'll let them introduce themselves because I only got one card. But at the request of council members, a number of weeks ago, I reached out to Duke and asked that they would come in and basically give us a briefing of what they're doing, where they're doing it, what the project looks like, and when they're going to be done, and whatever else you might add. So thank you all for being here. I know you brought a whole team. I appreciate all of you spending the time coming to talk to your city government. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Although all I can think about now is that really nice lift station. I really want to see the nice lift station. So it's all a buzz throughout the state. It's all. I'm sure they are. My name's Dave Schlenker. I'm a public engagement manager. And we're here to talk to you a little bit about substation optimization, which is the process. It's why you're seeing a lot of Duke trucks around your neighborhoods and cities. And I'm going to give it over to Rhonda Santana. She's another public engagement manager, and she's the brains of this operation. So I'm going to step aside and let Rhonda take it.
Good evening, everybody.
Can I interrupt you just for a moment? Can we have a seat for this gentleman right here? Please.
Okay.
And thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Can you just pull the microphone?
Thank you. I'm Rhonda Santana, like Dave mentioned. I am one of the public engagement managers for Pasco County, specifically for the Port Richey West substation. I have a presentation together to kind of talk about what Duke Energy is doing in the community. We are strengthening our grid on the heels of Hurricane Ian. You see it's a stronger grid, improves reliability. Duke Energy has gone through and targeted certain feeders in certain areas within our service territory that, whether it be due to increased vegetation or reliability concerns with numerous power outages and whatnot, we have identified areas to strengthen that grid, whether it be stronger, taller poles, thicker wire, and in some instances, putting the power lines underground in some communities. So this specific slide here is just kind of giving you an idea of the purpose of this project. It's to prevent outages, minimize outages, and strengthen our grid within the community. I'm sure you've seen lots of trucks between our subcontractor, Irby, Duke Energy trucks and whatnot, but that's the purpose of what they're doing, is they're improving our grid and increasing reliability. So you can go to the next slide. So here's some statistics on the Port Richey West substation. Now just keep in mind the Port Richey West substation includes the city of Port Richey as well as New Port Richey too. So some of these statistics that you may see, it's encompassing the entire substation, so which is both cities. It serves approximately 17,000 customers. And it's the initiative to strengthen 8 feeder lines along more than 70 miles within Pasco County. The upgrades that we're doing, like I mentioned, is stronger, taller poles, thicker wires, but also installing self-healing technology, which meaning to quickly identify power outages and restore the power quicker. We're upgrading approximately 700 poles to better withstand winds and replacing more than 16,000 miles of overhead electrical lines and underground lines.
No, 16.
I'm sorry? 16, oh, excuse me, thank you, 16. That is a lot of miles. Thank you. I added a few zeros, so. So the next slide is just an aerial map of the areas that are included in the Port Richey West substation. As you see, it's a large territory that's served by this particular substation. The next slide is just showing one of the feeders that is serviced by this substation. I know there's a lot of information that's on this map. It's pretty busy, but It's basically showing the scope of the project for this particular part of the substation, talking about different pole replacements, where those pole replacements are going to be, transformer replacements, underground cables, and then some of the self-healing technology that I mentioned about to provide quicker restoration. Again, this is just another feeder line. A feeder line is the main large power lines that feed out to the communities from the substation. Again, just showing the work that's being done in the community. And you'll notice all of it, the icon on the bottom just kind of gives you an idea of what type of work, transformer replacements that are being done. And the red lines are the overhead power lines. We can just continue on. This is just all the different overhead maps of the areas that is served by this particular substation. Our goal is to provide a more reliable service for the city and the community residents. We're using smart data, like I mentioned, to identify outage-prone areas and relocating these power lines underground, like I mentioned. And as far as the customer communication, which is a role that myself and Dave are heavily involved with the residents, we send communications out to the residents, first letting them know that their property has been identified as part of this program. So it's typically done by a postcard. We send them a postcard to let them know that this work is coming to their area. And then as we progress through the project, more communication is done, whether it be by a phone call. We can do an automated phone call to the resident to inform them of what's going on in their community, scheduling appointments if they need to for us to come and talk to them about the program and what's going on in their particular property. We hold pre-construction meetings, so myself, my project manager, construction crews, and engineers will walk the job scope with the residents, meet with them, knock on their doors, talk to them if they have questions or concerns about what may be happening on their property, whether it be, if specifically this is for a project that maybe we're putting the power lines underground from the road to their residents. We sit and talk to them. And then as the project progresses through construction, we have a restoration phase that once everything is constructed, we'll drive back through, see what type of restoration work may need to be done, whether it be cleanup or if there's something that may have happened to fix, then we fix that for the residents and then send out exit surveys to the residents, just getting their feedback on how the process went on the project. Next slide is my contact information. Like I mentioned, I'm the public engagement manager. I'm basically myself and Dave tag team for this particular area. We're your point contact for the residents if there's questions or concerns or something that we can help address for them. We are basically the person between the customer and our construction crews as we progress through this project. I don't know if there was anything that I may have missed or you wanted to add, Dave? Or?
Yeah, just want to add one more thing. We mentioned substation optimization, and the reason we call it substation optimization is within our agreement with the state of Florida, we are taking on repairs instead of kind of grabbing feeders one by one, kind of taking the problems as they come. We're going to address these substations once every 5 years. We're going in, and what we do is, Ron had mentioned it's data driven, which means it tells us which feeders, what are the points of weaknesses on these feeder lines. So that's what substation optimization is we pinpoint certain substations that we're going to just do massive amounts of work on. And when I say massive, as you see, you've seen a lot of trucks within the county. I mean, we're doing a lot of these overheads, thicker wires, as Rhonda mentioned, bigger poles. Here we are, as I say, yeah, we dodged a bullet with Ian. Our goal is to get you guys up and going before next year's, God knows what that'll bring. But yeah, it's kind of an all-encompassing. We get it going within 5 years. The underground is mostly residential areas. Those are the areas that we go and do the pre-cons, the ones that we stop. That's more heavily customer focused with us. We're in a lot of yards, mostly in Pasco County. A lot of what determines undergrounding for the residential lots are, in Pasco County, you have a lot of backfed lots. Houses that back up with a line going right behind them. Those are very vulnerable lines, trees are crawling all over them, and also it's hard for us to get to them, especially during a storm. So that brings, ideally we bring those underground out front. We have, we can easily access and maintain that equipment. So that's what we're going for, and I'm gonna open it up for questions, and I guess that's your job. You can open it.
One of the questions that I had is, just from experience sitting here, it seems like like you said, the areas where we're running power underground, just has much better service, particularly when you have storms, you don't have things falling on lines and all that. Is that the ultimate goal, particularly since we're a coastal, we're really in Hurricane Alley, so it's going to be just an ongoing issue with storms coming through. Is there like a projected timetable, and is that the ultimate goal, to have everything underground?
I wouldn't say that's the ultimate goal. Boy, I'd love to have everything underground at this point, but right now we're just identifying the severely problematic lines at this point. I don't think we're eventually going to put the entire thing underground. No, I'd love to see that.
But as much as you guys can.
Yeah, yeah. And what we do is we look at talk about the data-driven. We really analyze that on what makes sense to address these particular problems. Like if you have a strong corridor of overhead lines there that just need some stronger poles, that's probably what we're going to do, and put the other money toward more vulnerable lines that are those are the ones that we're going to put underground. So
and that's a cost benefit analysis you guys do coming.
Correct. But ultimately, we want to get everybody's power up the best way we see fit, strengthen that grid for the next storm coming up. So, not that there's going to be another storm coming up. But
that was the question that I had. The only other issue I wanted to ask you is I know that there's equipment that when you guys are taking in poles or putting stuff underground,
yes, sir.
To identify where the cities, obviously we have sewer, water, we have all kinds of stuff running through there too. Do you guys have equipment to try and identify that, or what do you guys do in terms of trying to work around our infrastructure, if you will?
And that's where locates are done, meaning there's a service out there that, in some instances, I'm not sure if it's done by the city or if it's a separate entity that might do that, but locates are done to identify cable, telephone, water, any lines that are underground, so that locates are performed prior to construction.
Okay, so that's all the prep work before you guys begin then?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Because I know that we've had some issues with, and it just happens, I'm sure it's going to happen, because there's no exact science to what you guys do and what we do with the infrastructure. But I was trying to figure out if you guys had equipment and how you guys were working that.
Yes. Locates are done prior, yes.
The citizen concerns that I
Of course.
Gee, we don't have water and it's a main break. But when you're installing stuff, it just happens. So it just is what it is.
Yeah, it can happen, but yes.
And that's another thing too, is that with the locates, feel free, my number's not up there, so I'm dumping it on Rhonda, but when you have concerns of people who have questions on, if there is a water line that gets hit or something like that, feel free to have them call us. Absolutely, because we want to keep track of that too. The contractor usually calls us. We certainly do locates and up to the point of on city property past the right of way, and that that's where we rely on public works departments to identify that. But in terms of private locates, that's where we come in. We have those contractors in. Sometimes they're mismarked. Sometimes it's tough, but we do our best to go around them, and we're usually about 3.5 to 4 feet under, so we're usually under most of those facilities as it is. So.
Perfect. Thank you for answering my questions. I want to turn it over to the rest of the board to see if they had any questions.
I do have a question for y'all. I noticed that the newer, larger poles that y'all have in place, they look beautiful. But what I'm saying too is that 2 feet away, your equipment's on that pole, but yet the old pole has the other utilities on it, and it looks like they're not going anywhere. Who's holding those other utility companies accountable to get that eyesore out of our city?
So as the construction is complete, excuse me, as we begin construction, we notify the joint use, whether it be cable, telephone lines that may be sharing a pole with us. We inform them that what our plans are, that we are planning to come off of that pole, and it's up to them to come off of that pole if they choose to. But we do inform them of our plans and that we're coming off of that particular pole. Does that?
If they choose to, if they don't, in other words, that pole is just going to remain there with that utility on there. Is that my understanding?
I don't know if you.
We really keep in close contact with those joint users, particularly with underground, but you're referring to those bigger poles?
Can you speak, because the public's gonna listen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure, but yes, ultimately, it's their decision. However, we keep in contact with them. There actually is, there's state provisions to have joint users come off poles. I know Spectrum has been real good about it, but we also encourage, if you're seeing that and they're not coming off as quickly as we'd like, feel free to give them a call too, as well. But yeah, we do urge joint use to come off, especially, with the residential, with the underground, but certainly with overhead you're right, you're seeing those big poles and then the little poles with the other lines too. So yeah, we really encourage them to come off into the big poles as well.
So when those other utility companies remove their lines and what's left of that pole, who's responsible for removing those?
We'll come and pluck it out. Yep.
We can't give them a time limit, like the end of the year to get it done or something?
We can ask them, sure.
Yeah.
We'll love to see that.
Yeah, well, that's good to know.
I have two quick questions. One, when are you gonna be done? Any idea?
We're projected to complete construction by first quarter of next year.
So March of next year, you should be out of there.
That's the plan.
You had mentioned a 5-year cycle for this, so we're gonna see this happen every 5 years, or is you're addressing different parts of the system every 5 years?
We'll go around, excuse me. We'll analyze each substation. So most likely, I would say, another 5 years, we're probably not going to come and do all this again. So,
This is probably one.
Right.
It's only this time for a while, and then we might
Correct.
see 10 or 15 years.
we know you guys have so much fun driving around all those trucks. We just want you to have the pleasure of doing that next 5 years too.
That was my main question.
Thank you.
Well, being somebody who, by the luck of the draw, is in a block that got underground, and we've been going through that for a number of months. It's pretty much completed now. Mr. Slacker, I do have your phone number because you made the mistake of calling me. I'm not so foolish as to delete that phone number. Thank you for the call. I might point out too that our city has now gotten equipment of our own to give us a better ability to mark our utilities for you.
Good.
I know that, having lived through it, I saw any number of cadres through, putting flags down, whether it was Frontier or whether it was us.
Right.
And then I saw flags get moved. And then I saw basically guys with shovels digging holes, going down to see what the heck was down there. So
Right. Yep.
It's locating the underground, different things that are underground, especially my neighborhood, which is a pretty old neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's water lines from the 40s, there's sewer lines that were put in at a different time, there's Frontier Fios lines that were put in at a different time. And a lot of our older stuff was never mapped, and, whoever did it, they're long gone, we can't blame them. But, it's a bit of a chore. And, like I said, I've got, I would mention that in our area down on the south side where you did that, there's some areas where you had to cut away pavement, you put in patches, but those are patches that are not what I foresee as permanent patches. They could take a little extra looking at.
In that area.
I'm not necessarily saying you're done.
Oh, right, and that was the question, because after we're done, we to our idea is to try to make it look as good, if not better. So if there are areas that Once we're out in that neighborhood, for example, where, we energize from the overhead and then go to the underground, once that job is done, we do removal of poles, equipment, all that good stuff. Then we go back through with restoration. If there's anything we missed, if there's somebody, a sidewalk down the road that we weren't, again, call us and, we come back for restoration as we need to.
I mean, you would never cut into pavement unless you had a real good reason to.
That is also correct.
Would really prefer you didn't cut it.
Yeah.
Patch is a patch is a patch. No
Yep.
matter how good it is, it's not as good as the original road work.
Right, right.
Some of those things are unavoidable. This presentation, this is sort of a joint question to you and our city manager. The PowerPoint presentation you just gave us.
Mm-hmm.
John, is there a possibility we could get that PowerPoint and put it up on a website for people to peruse and look at it? And
Absolutely, yeah.
for those who aren't watching this meeting, or even if they did, can't see those screens all that well,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good presentation. I have to say my interactions with your vendors and both Duke and Irby has always been good.
Wonderful,
They've
good.
always, listened and at every step of the process, somebody came out and said, this is what's happening. From the get-go, y'all came out and knocked on the door and said, hey, we're gonna bury your power lines. And then months later, it's like, okay, we're gonna start. And then okay, when are you gonna be home so we can switch over your box?
Right, right.
One other thing I'll add about the ancillary poles that you were talking about, in my neighborhood, now that it's buried, yeah, you got Charter up there, but the other thing you have is streetlights.
Yeah.
So, when they bury the lines, either if you take down the poles, you gotta know where to put the streetlights. So we're gonna have buried power, but we're still gonna have those old poles up there. I heard
Yeah.
you say you probably have
We,
the top off where your
right.
lines used to be and short the poles.
Yeah, unless unless there's a customer request to remove a street light, those street lights stay up there, those poles stay up there, so.
So, I mean, going back to what you said, if there's a new pole, they can put the street light on the new pole, but if you get buried electric, well.
We're not the lucky ones to get
Yeah,
buried,
we're not.
so.
And it's sort of a double-edged sword because, just getting from your house to the market can be a challenge at times with any variety of so many different trucks at the same time doing so many different things, but an awful lot of equipment out there. So that's my feedback on it.
Great, and I appreciate that.
Yep, that's all I got.
I would ask, we've had some residents, saying sidewalks have been broken, and we kind of need to prioritize that, because obviously residents use them, we don't want anyone, kids, et cetera, to trip and fall and hurt themselves. So I know Bay Boulevard was, specifically, mentioned at one point about a month ago or so. I don't know if that's been fixed, unfortunately, I don't know.
You said Bay Boulevard? I can look into that.
Somebody had taken their kids down and it was not safe. So, but as you go along, I understand, roads and stuff like that, but sidewalks where people are walking really need to be, very close attention be paid to that to prevent any injury to anybody, please.
Absolutely. Thank you for that feedback.
One other quick question. For those areas where you've done similar projects to what you're doing here, which obviously spans a pretty big area too, covers a big area. What with this past hurricane, did you see a noticeable difference in how you were able to respond in areas that were both hardened and impacted by the storm?
Oh, is that?
No, go ahead.
Oh, we don't have any hard data at this point, but we know that, those with the larger infrastructure, with the bigger infrastructure, I can tell you I can safely say we were able to get to, it made it much easier to restore power for properties that have had substation optimization work. If anything, that means, you can get to the transformer that's now on the side of the road versus, tromping around in the back. We hopefully will have some good data here coming up, once these.
Because obviously your program started before.
Yeah.
Actually, it was ahead.
Right.
I'm sure there are areas that were impacted.
Yep.
That were already done some more.
And we get really nice calls every now and then from folks that say, you know what, I would have been out of power a year ago. So that's not hard data, but it's nice to hear nice people call us, so.
And I have Eric Sachon with us. He's our Director of Engineering. He may have some data. I don't know if you have any data with regards to storm. I didn't know if you had anything with regards to.
Sure. Good evening. It's again Eric Sachon. So you asked about how we know how our infrastructure is holding up, the new infrastructure that is.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Obviously, you've been doing a lot
Right.
of work and it's actually been put under some pressure and noticeable difference to you
Yes.
with your ability to bring things up quicker than you normally would have.
That is correct. Yeah,
Didn't go down, but you would expect probably would have done.
yes. Part of our storm plan is to actually do a forensic analysis on all of our infrastructure, in particular our poles.
I was going to say, particularly, how well did your new poles hold up?
Well, and that's part of the infrastructure forensic analysis. We look at everything we've installed of recent times with this whole substation optimization in every area to assess how well it is held up and any type of infrastructure challenges. I don't have that data right now because we're still compiling it, but we are collecting it because we have to report to the public service. I'm sorry, say again?
What was your sense?
My sense is it held up very well. You're talking about poles that are so much thicker. The infrastructure alone, just being brand new, is going to withstand a stronger storm than one that isn't as robust as it once was. So my sense is it held up very well. I've certainly talked to a couple of folks over in the DeLand area where we have a couple of these programs as well, and they said it's the first time they've had a storm come through where they did not have the lights go out. So that's anecdotal data, but it is at least a data point to share that I feel it's a very strong infrastructure we're putting in that's going to be able to withstand these types of events.
Thank you, Eric. Any other questions?
I believe that's all we have for questions and answers. And I just wanted to thank you for your time and for coming out. I know the citizens, it's been one of the hot topics because the trucks are everywhere and they just want to know what's going on. And a lot of times we don't know. So I do see, we'll open it for public commentary, but I wanted to say thank you first. And I'll invite.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. At this time, anyone from the public like to speak on this particular topic? Come on up.
I'm Steve Patton, 5213 Bay Boulevard, and I've actually been wondering who I could talk to about this very project. The crews was out there today. They've been great. They're respectful, they're friendly, they knock on the door and give us a heads up today. They let me know the power is going to be out. They don't mind me asking them questions. They don't roll their eyes, you know. They give me, I asked some of the same questions you guys did about when they're going to get rid of those other poles. And, but I wanted to tell somebody, they've been amazing. And the crew, I don't know about all the other crews, but the ones on Bay Boulevard, I don't know if you could pass that on to them, but they've done a great job and been very friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Anyone else like to speak? Seeing no hands, we're going to move on to the next item. That's going to be.
Very much.
Thank you, guys.
Very much. Appreciate you coming out.
The next item is going to be the surplus of City Hall information or IT equipment. I'm going to pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The pieces of equipment are listed, and I think we've even got some pictures. It's been determined there's no net value to the city. Would request a motion to approve deeming them surplus.
Motion to get rid of the IT stuff.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
The next issue we have is flood insurance coverage assessment, which is our ISO information. I wanted to pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's no action needed here. The CRS folks give us points if we put this into the public venue, so consider it in the public venue. It will assist our efforts to manage our CRS. So we've accomplished the mission by having it on the agenda.
Perfect. The only other thing I wanted to ask is this published anywhere else, or is this information that you'd have to get to the fire department, do you know?
Do we have it online yet? We can sure put it up.
You may want to just put a link, because I know that when I was looking at ISO, they said that you should always contact your fire chief But he's got other stuff to do sometimes. It'd be better just to put it up for the public. So, because he's out there training and working with his people and saving lives out there. So we don't want to tie him up with phone calls about ISO ratings. So, thank you for doing that for us. Anything else on this item?
No, sir.
The next item I'd like to address is iWork Pavement Assessment Report, and I'm going to pass that to Mr. Booth for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The street survey that was requested several months ago by council has been completed. That report is in your packet. It's fascinating reading. It actually lays out here's a plan. It's up to us whether we want to follow the plan, but the plan is there on how your streets were rated, what the ratings of the streets are. Every street in the city was given a rank number, and that rank number is a residual service life, and that is very useful in trying to put together a street maintenance program. They have budgeting suggestions in there, but just in reading through the report, you can see our average RSL, residual service life score, is about 7.6. The industry standard is to try to maintain your RSL at 10. And so what that tells you is that our entire street system, I'm telling you something you already know, hasn't been maintained well enough to keep that average score around 10. iWorks makes the recommendation that we begin budgeting a certain amount of money to raise that score over time. Now, if we had, unlimited funds, we'd just go fix every street in town and, raise the score real quickly. So the report is there for your perusal. You'd also discussed a number of weeks ago the possibility of using ARPA funds for street maintenance, and kind of talked about that a little bit. So what I did is I took the iWork report with all of their scores and kind of laid out how would our RSL change if we just started with the sixes and spent $250,000. And that doesn't get us all the sixes, but iWork suggests that if you do chip seal, you'll raise your RSL 5 to 7 points. So I assumed the most conservative. I assumed that those RSLs would go up 5 points.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Air conditioner.
And then I did the same thing if we just started with the sixes and worked our way down until we'd spent $500,000. And as you can see in my recommendations, that raises our average RSL a little more. And if we spend $750,000, what does that do to our RSL? Now we get out of the sixes and we're into the eights. Those eights turn into 13s. And now you're really making progress on your RSL. Obviously, if we spent $1.4 million of ARPA money, you wouldn't do anything else with ARPA, but your RSL would be well over 10. That's your discretion how you want to spend that money. But I wanted to give you some idea of what does it do to the entire system if we spend $250, if we spend $500, if we spend $750, if we spend $1 million. Considering you've also talked about using ARPA funds to design and build the limestone fishing pier, you've got an agenda item to approve the design work for that. That's $175,000. It's a wild guess on my part that it's another $350 to build the pier itself. That's a wild guess. I'm not even close to an expert on that, but trying to be conservative. So my assumption was you need about $500,000 total to do that pier, which leaves you about $900,000 in ARPA funds. Some of that you're going to want to spend on professional services to manage the ARPA funds. Leave $100,000 for contingency. My suggestion would be you look at spending about $750,000 in ARPA funds for street maintenance as recommended by the iWorks report. And obviously the easiest way is just start with the sixes, and from about number 17 on that spreadsheet down to 139, I think, gives you about $750,000. and it raises your RSL. I don't remember where that gets you up to 9.52. That puts you in a position to start looking at the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and actually start budgeting street maintenance. IWork suggests 190,000 every year. You budget the money, we contract for the work, and a bunch of streets get maintained so that those fixes become 9s or 10s or 11s, and the 8s become 13s, and the 12s become 17s. I don't have to tell you, but in the absence of the maintenance, the 8s become 6s, and the 6s become 4s.
Can I ask you something?
Yes, sir.
How much would it cost to do our 6s?
I'm not sure. I'd have to go back to my spreadsheet and run the numbers. But it was going to be over 500,000 just to get the 6s.
But that's in the wheelhouse of the 750, so
Yes, sir.
that may be.
Yeah, the 750 gets you through the 6s and into the 8s.
So the question that I have for the rest of the council, kind of by consensus, is whether or not we want to ask Mr. Duke to put together ARPA funds and just address the 6s now that we have some empirical data here for expert opinion on which roads to do. And just try and get all the 6s done while we have some ARPA funds.
I'm kind of inclined to get us to a 9.52, which is close to a 10, and maintain our infrastructure working to the recommended level. My understanding is if we just do the 6s, that gets us to an 8.83, and we're still shy of the recommended path. To me, ARPA would be a great use of funds to repair our streets and keep everything going. Maybe that additional 100,000 of contingency, if that comes to fruition, that we have it, that repairs some of our sidewalks that Duke doesn't touch for, their use.
One of the questions that I had just from a general funding purpose, and I can't remember, I know that for road maintenance, we can't use CRA funds. I think that's just one of, if I recall, that's one of the rules. But I'm not sure if we can't maintain some of the sidewalks with CRA money. So if that's the case, if I'm right on that, what I'd like to do is use ARPA funding for the roads and then use CRA money if we're going to clean up a couple of the sidewalks for the sidewalks, if we can.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that 100,000, we can then put into additional roads too. They're here and there, but I'd like to get as much of our roads repaired and updated and to the recommended.
But I think that's our best use of the ARPA funds, because if not, we're going to be talking about adding a couple $100,000 every year, which is going to increase our taxes about $1 million, or at least $500,000. So, that's a lot of mills we'll be saving our folks if we use ARPA money for just roads. And that's my opinion.
And I'm agreeing with that as well. I like that direction.
Okay. So what I would like to do is see what we can get done for $750,000, because I know that the rest of it we can probably use on the pier and still have some left over. But 750, I think, is a good conservative estimate, and I think that'll knock out our 6s and maybe a couple of our 8s and our more.
It gets you about half of your 8s.
Okay.
And that bumps your score up to 9.5.
One thing, because I live in Candlelight, Orange Grove was just paved 2 years ago, maybe, something like that. And on here, Orange Grove is only a 10. So I don't know why that's a 10. It's a 2-year-old road, repaving. I don't know if they just did a pave over. I don't know.
And I saw that with Washington, the same thing. I was looking at that.
So my thing with that is, I don't know who did that. I don't know if it was a process issue. I don't know why it's only a 10. So we might want to look at doing it right, not doing it to a 10, because obviously, like you said, a couple years it's going to be an 8. We're in the same boat. Let's shoot for doing it correctly.
But I would ask too that we go out and just do an eye test too, because you may have things that are showing as an 8 or a 10 in here when you go out and they've already been redone, and we don't want to redo them again a second time. So once we decide like we're going to do the 6s and so many 8s, we might want to, even if someone goes out and snaps some pictures and shows us some pictures, just to show that we're not repaving a road that's already been repaved. So I agree with that.
The 6th and 8th need to be done. I agree with everybody. I want to do it right 10, let's bring them up to better than that so that they maintain for longer, we can work on the other roads.
So there's several different maintenance techniques that iWork lays out. And their recommendation is with the 6s, the 8s, the 10s, that you do what's called chip and seal, which is overlaying with both chipped rock and tar. I'm sure that's not the technical word, but it's not repaving the roadway. But that sealant with the rock then increases the life of that road another 5 years. Every year it gets a little more worn, it comes back to where it was. For roads that are in the 14, 16, 18 range, there's a much cheaper process. It's called crack seal. It literally is just blowing the dirt out of the cracks and putting tar just in the cracks in the roadway. At the other end of the scale is what's called mill and overlay, and that is grinding off 1, 2, 3 inches of asphalt and putting a brand new layer of 2 or 3 inches of asphalt on top of it. Now, obviously, those are progressively more expensive. Mill and overlay, and the numbers are in the report, but suffice to say, mill and overlay is very expensive. iWork suggests that if your road has to have mill and overlay, that you don't use your maintenance program for that. You start looking for grant money and other sources. But just that, so it may look like it's got a new top on it, but it's not actually asphalt. If crack, chip and seal is what was done. But it'll add another 4, 5, 6 years to the life of the road. So we go out and take a look. There's some other tweaks that have to be done. There's a couple of roadways that are in here that are actually county roads, and so we can take those out. I don't have any intent of maintaining county's roadways, but the iWorks folks didn't recognize Grand, and so there's some of those minor tweaks. But obviously, when it comes time to bid, we'd want to go out with contractors and look at it and make sure that we're paying for what we need. So,
And I wanted to comment on something that you said, because I know that we had a lot of discussion on whether or not we were going to maintain the road up that was a private road, and obviously we decided not to do that. Right? But I saw like Marina Palms was one of the ones here that looked like it was a 6 and they wanted to redo. Some of these we may need to know whether or not they're private roads versus city roads, and that was one of the things I was going to ask you.
I saw one that's inside of Sand Pebble.
So I was just going to ask that you include that in terms of in your analysis, so that, because I think what the consensus was is we can either agree to pave those roads or not, maintain those or not maintain them. But I think that as a group, if we've already decided not to maintain one, I don't think we maintain any of them. And that's my opinion. And I wanted to know if we can have a consensus and give our city management that direction.
Well, I agree with that. Private roads.
Private, yes.
No, which roads are Marina Palms are you on?
This one, I thought I saw Marina Palms in here somewhere. But there were a couple that are looked here that looked like they might be private roads. So
Because Marina Palms, as that subdivision or whatever you call it, we paid that. They're dedicated roads. I'm saying, but we relatively recently paved that goal. So
but
maybe the road you saw is something that's called Marina Palms, but not part of Marina Palms. We didn't.
But I don't know all the roads, whether they're.
Right, no, I understand.
And that's why I was asking to have some direction there, because my position is I don't necessarily want to pave roads, or any roads that aren't ones that we have to maintain. But in all fairness, and I show a little bit of ignorance, I don't know some of the roads which you maintain once, so I'll need a little direction, and I assume you guys will want a little direction on that as well.
I don't, we maybe discussed it before when I was not in the room, but, there's certain roads where the road itself, like Bay Boulevard, is what, 8? Something like that. And that's true for majority of it. But then you have that little section that runs from 19 to where the Walmart people come out. That gets like a ton of traffic, right? And just that one section of the road might be something that you might want to do a mill job on, whereas the rest of the road is to a track and seal.
The only other point that I wanted to make is there are some roads that we have that would benefit just from restriping and painting the curves. Like there's areas of Bay Boulevard where the road is still in pretty good shape. And you have a curb, particularly off to the right, I know there's like an apartment complex there going, when you come into the city, before the four-way stop on Old Post. We may just want to just do the lines and paint the curb if nothing else, because I think that'll help, not only for safety reasons, because you have kids coming up and down the bus stops there and all that, but it'll just look cleaner coming in. So the cost of just simply striping the roads and the curbs in some of these areas may be worthwhile, even if we don't do the actual road repair right away in our maintenance schedule. And that's one of the things I was going to ask city management to look at as well, but I don't want to do that if you guys are of a different opinion. Because I don't think it costs a lot just to restripe the road and paint the curbs.
I mean, if it's on the list as a 4, then I maybe wouldn't agree with that. So I don't know, I'd have to look at it, but yeah, I mean, if it's, yeah, and then restripe it, yeah.
That's what I'm getting. Restriping is essentially basic road maintenance anyway. Sure, it's kind of, something we should be doing.
But we haven't been. If you look around the city, we just haven't.
Right,
So
that's something we definitely should look
Okay.
at. Striping is well beyond its lifespan.
Okay.
We can look at it.
That's all I had. I just wanted to make sure that he had some direction, that you guys were on board.
Definitely on board. I'm bored, and I'm gonna need to know which roads are private, just don't paint private roads.
Yeah, we'll go through the list and clean it up. I work was not necessarily sensitive to where the public line is. If it looked like a city street, they evaluated it. So we can do that cleanup work.
If you're okay, as a group, I'd like to move on from that and move on to our next item. And that's going to be the 5245 Limestone Drive Fishing Pier. And I'm going to pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At council's direction, we've received 2 quotes for design work for the Limestone Drive Fishing Pier. The proposal from Coastal Design came in at a better price and also included the process of putting bid packets together. It's a service that we need and would want to be in that. So after staff review, and Mr. Matthews been through it as well, I request a motion to approve accepting the proposal from Coastal Design to do the design work at a bid price of $175,100. That was your the council's direction, yes, sir. That would be my intent unless directed otherwise. Yes, sir.
I have much to approve estimated cost like cost design for $175,000.
A motion and a second. This is actually a lot of money, and it is our open money, so I did want to open this to the general public for any kind of commentary before we vote. I know that Dave Mueller had signed up. Mr. Mueller, welcome.
Dave Miller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. Appreciate you taking my input. First off, Mayor, Council, you're appointed in these positions to ensure that we're moving in the right direction and spending money as a fiduciary. What I did not see in this effort was any residential input. The residents were never, or at least solicited, any concerns of how they'd like to see this move. Do you want to build a smaller one? Do you want to build it somewhere else? None of this information was provided. Looking at the cost of $175,000 for a plan, in which I went through both plans, or both proposals. I did not see any real criteria as to what is it that we're building, how long this is going to be, what construction materials are going to be used. It's almost like we gave them, say, hey, go do this and come back with it. Well, guess what? When you do that, shame on you, because what happens is they bend you over the table. And I believe that's what's happening here. When you go to build a house, do you go to an architect? Certainly that's one way to go. Or do you go to a builder who's already got plans and everything that's already been addressed? I think you can get it much cheaper if you go to the source rather than to somebody to design something that we don't really have any specifications on. So the scope needs to be addressed. The city evidently built this in 1993. I'm wondering if we're going to proceed, maybe the city can demolish this in a fashion similar to the fact that they built it, potentially saving money there. In addition, the county is potentially owns the property next to, adjacent to, and beyond this property, and potentially has a plan to build a parking and a boat launch there, or ramps. I think it would behoove us to put this on the shelf until some kind of plan gets together there to address what it is they're doing and potentially make this harmonize with both projects. And I think it'd be beneficial to wait and join into their design so that we have some joint ownership there, since it's going to be in our community as well. I appreciate you putting this on the shelf. I don't think we need to proceed. I've gotten preliminary estimates of what it would take to build the construction from an engineer, from a general contractor that already has engineered plans for a particular pier and beyond. Their plans entailed 10 by 90 4-foot pier with pole pilings and wear deck, the PVC material on the deck, which has got a 25-year life. That particular plan set also included a ramp handicap to be able to get in for ADA, as well as aluminum powder coated railings. That particular project was 70 grand. Now, granted, that was a year ago. Prices have gone up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Would anyone else like to speak by show of hands? Seeing no hands. Any commentary from the board?
I have one question. How many engineering firms did we solicit bids from on this?
We reached out to all our approved engineers for this, and 2 responded.
Thank you. And I was going to just make a brief comment as well. One of the concerns I have with the ARPA funds is we were told quite clearly that we have a short time frame to spend the money, or else we have to give it back or lose it. And one of the concerns I have, particularly when you're trying to rely on other entities like the county, is we've had other projects with monies, and 6-7 years later, we still don't get it done because of the cooperation. When I say the cooperation, it's just not coordinated very well. I'd rather not do that with this type of project with ARPA money. I'd rather get this project moving, spend the money, and get the project done. So that's my particular opinion. I know there was a motion in a second, but that's the main reason I'm for it, and not wanting to go out for more bids. And that's right. And I think that we have to move so we don't lose the money at some point.
I do have one other question. Sure. Right now, they're anticipating a total contract time of 730 days. I know we have until 2024 to spend the money, I believe it is.
Check with Rachel. What's our spend date for ARPA funds?
There is an end date, to my knowledge. It's just at some point in time they could call back the money. We don't know. It's uncertain at this point in
I
time.
was almost positive there was a spend by date.
I thought we were given a date too at some point.
Yeah, it was 2024 was.
I'll have to look it up. There is a
earmarking date.
Have it allocated by.
It's an
Oh, it was an
allocated
earmarking
date. Yeah, it's earmarked to allocated, but Mr. Dude has a date.
Yeah.
Right, you.
Yeah,
But I don't think I think you have to earmark it and file something. I don't know if you have to spend it by then. In fact, this may be enough because it gives you a quote as to what the construction would be. And it's certainly enough.
the money isn't, this money, isn't at risk if we earmark it, if we allocate it for this project. But somewhere in the next 2 years, you have to have the money allocated. You have to have your first year's money allocated, and then, we've already received the second year's money. And so that's a year further down the road. But I'd hate to get a year down the road from now and somebody decides to change the rules. If you don't have it allocated, we want it back. And that's part of the guidance we've gotten from the feds. The quicker you spend it, the better.
Before the next election.
Yes, correct.
So before the rules change.
I'm totally in for working with the county. I truly am. But I'm just using the Cody River Landing as a benchmark. These things take time. We're already a year and a half into Cody River Landing. We haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet. If we wait for the county, what are they, 2 years away from, 2.5 years away from putting a shovel in the ground? So we've already had Fishing Pier closed for almost a year. That's 3 years that the citizens don't have a fishing pier that they used. And so I definitely in favor for moving forward with this. I think the residents deserve that.
Well, to my understanding, there is no hard plan that I'm aware of by the county for exactly what they're going to do.
Right, and that's why I think we're at
when
least
they're
2
gonna do
years,
it.
minimum
They're-
2 years away.
They're acquiring property with that intention, but beyond that, they may be 5 years out on this. I don't know.
When I met with Mr. Wiley, county staff that is in charge of that, we talked about, should we collaborate and, add our pier to your project, design them together, make it all one project. And he asked me our timeline, and I said, my council wants me to do it, yesterday. He said, we're 2 years out. He said, I'm planning money is next year, and then construction money is the year after. He and I can keep talking. I can show him plans when we have them. But you're right, they are 2 years. And that assumes the politics stay the same and the plan stays the same. So, we tried. It seems like a good idea to collaborate with our neighbor that's going to do something similar right next door. But if you want a fishing pier, it's either this one or we build one somewhere else. But I don't want to wait 2 years for the county, and then the feds are starting to talk about we want our ARPA money back, one way or another.
And I'm okay with moving forward and letting the county work around what we're doing here. It's for our citizens, so
it was a very congenial conversation. Our timelines just don't match up.
I also just want to. Not us just saying, go design us a pier and we're going to build whatever the heck you design. Right. I mean, if you look under here under project management meetings, they're going to meet with us. They're going to see what we want them to do, what we envision the pier to look like, and they're all going to do this within, engineer guidelines, ADA guidelines, everything else we need to do. It's not like building, if you want to just go out and go to a pier builder or to a dock builder, you're going to wind up with what we had at Waterfront Pier, which is we put up a pier, and it lasted how many years, Jim? Do you know? 12 best, and then it was like this. And then when we went back and looked, and we had an engineer look at it, we had whoever put in that pier, that dock builder, who was supposed to bury pilings to a specified number of feet. They just blew down until they hit Uncle Lime Rock, and that's where the piling sat. We had literally pilings that were sitting after erosion on the surface. So, we need a specifically engineered, whatever we decide upon, one that's engineered to specs, and we need to, when we see the building of this thing, to make sure it's done absolutely right, which is why you just do it this way. And basically, our city staff, our public works department, they are not contractors. That's not what they do. They don't build piers. And they don't demo houses. That's why we're not hiring them to demo houses. And I know in the past that they've done things, and Public Works has done what they were asked to do by then management that just didn't turn out so darn good, including sprucing up this pier which, you know, in a very short period of time, the pier we're talking about went all heck. We had to close it down because it was unsafe, so that's my
I
comment.
will say one thing, although I'm not exactly thrilled about the pricing on this, you're also having a pier on a state-regulated waterway with DEP, environmental regulations, permitting, and everything else. I know Ayers is here, and although he's not the low bidder, he could probably go on and on forever.
Representative from Coastal Engineering is also here.
Sorry, we can let him go on and on forever.
Then I can let him go on and on forever on the environmental regulations and everything else that he has to go through. So to get this, and I know the city can do it, but that was also 20 some odd years ago, almost 30 some odd years ago.
When they redid this pier, it was not that long ago. It was like in 2017.
They will get in a lot of trouble if they do that.
We're not doing that. I mean, as far as what they did, which is basically rejacked over the garbage. That's right, about 5 years.
It's a new structure, falls under a whole new set of rules.
And that's the point. The point is that the underlying structure for us to determine if that would be of value to us would cost an astronomical sum. Potentially find out if it's out is of no value to us. So basically what we're doing is we're building a freestanding pier over all that other stuff, which now just becomes reef material.
What I'd like to do is call this to a vote if you guys are ready.
Absolutely. I'd like to on this.
Yes.
We just recently had a presentation, a pavement assessment done, and we were told that the majority of our roads are below standard. And yet we're talking about putting money on a pier that every time that I've gone by, if I saw 3, 4 people on there, that was a lot. Our roads are used every single day, and I truly believe that we need to put as much as this ARPA money on our roads to help our citizens and get the standard up that we need for, I mean, this is money will really assist us, the city. So I feel that we need to address more of our infrastructure than putting the money into up here.
And if I can weigh in, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's gonna cost our taxpayers a lot of money to catch up on road work, depending on how much we spend out of the ARPA money. It's gonna defray a lot of that. One of the main reasons that I'm in favor of this is, number one, we're a waterfront community. We don't have a public fishing pier. Number two, it's kind of a historic, one of our few historic areas that we have in the city. You know, it's Old 19 Road, and it's been there for a very long time, and had usage. And the only other reason is I think the south side of the city, south side of the river, south side of the city's been neglected for a certain period of time. So for all those reasons, even though I think that we could use the money, all the money on the roads and just come out ahead, I think there'll still be enough money for roads and to do this project. So that's why I'm still in favor of it, for those reasons. So I just wanted to advance this. Not that I disagree that the road work is
Again,
important.
me personally, I like to see us address our roads more so than the pier.
At this time, let's call it to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
So let's poll, because I didn't hear everybody. I wanted to poll to see who's yeas, who's nays.
Calling for the vote for the 5245 Limestone Drive Fishing Pier. Councilwoman Linda Rodriguez.
Yes.
Councilman Bill Colombo.
Aye.
Mayor Scott Tremblay.
Aye.
Councilman Tom McLaren.
Nay.
Councilman Tom Kitzel. Nay. 2 nays and 3 yeses. Yeses.
Thank you. Going to move on to the next item, which is the purchase request for fire department for a Zoll monitor and defibrillator. I'm going to pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a purchase that was scheduled to be made in the previous fiscal year. We had it on the agenda for the last council meeting. Got one way by a hurricane. The fire department is requesting the purchase of a monitor defibrillator. I want to make a point of clarification so that this is This is a machine that does a couple of things that we need. One, it allows the firefighters who have the training to immediately begin to evaluate the electrical activity of the heart. Whether this is a cardiac arrest patient, a chest pain patient, and just about any other medical patient, this machine would be used for. It's a much more robust machine than what we know of as an AED, automatic external defibrillator. We've got an AED in a box out there. Anybody in the room could use it. It gives you instructions. It only does one thing. It shocks when a shock is needed. This machine obviously is many times more expensive than an AED, but it allows paramedics to begin the appropriate cardiac treatment based on the electrical activity that the machine puts up on the screen. The other thing that it does, and the reason we want to purchase a Zoll and not one of the other, there's several other manufacturers that make similar machines for similar prices. This machine has the same communication as the other machines in the county and the other machines in the hospital. And so we can have a continuity of care for a patient. Our guys get there, they hook the machine up to the patient, they begin monitoring, they begin treatment as is appropriate for what they see on the monitor. And when the county gets there with their ambulance and their personnel, they don't have to start over. They use the same patches, they take our wires off, they put their wires on, and they keep right on moving. This machine communicates with the ambulance machine, communicates with the hospital. So the reports that are generated, continuity of care for the patient. I know I've got a couple of nurses in the room to have some idea of what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to help you understand, one, why it's not $2,000. It's just not the same machine, doesn't have the same capacity. We could probably have in the past put AEDs on our fire trucks, we could put them in police cars, we've got them in City Hall, the guy selling hot dogs should have one. This is a much different machine with much more capability. Yes, it will defibrillate, it'll shock, but it'll also do the EKG analysis and communicate with the rest of the county system and hospital system. So having said all that, the money was allocated last year in Penny for Pasco. That money rolled over into reserve and would then be expended as it was intended last year. So we missed out on not having the council meeting the last of fiscal year. So it rolls over into this year's budget process. So having said that, I'd be glad to answer your questions. Would ask for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the purchase of Zoll monitor defibrillator to save my phone if I ever get in trouble.
That's the purpose.
You don't get to use it.
So we have a motion and a second. We'll open it up to the general public first to see if any commentary. Not seeing any hands go up. We'll open it for at least discussion on my end.
A quick question about a 1-year EMS warranty.
It's shocking.
The standard on this is a 1-year warranty, just like anything else, but every year we have it budgeted already. It needs service, so they'll come out to make sure it's working appropriately, that it's shocking appropriately, and take care of that through Zoll. Yeah, that's already, this is just the initial purchase. It's already budgeted for us to take care of the service. We're actually piggybacking on that under Pasco counties because there are 52 monitors that they have. They're just going to come and do ours the same day.
This also is a pacemaker.
Yes, it can pace.
That's very important. We all know what pacemakers are, they get quick, but this, through the past, will be the pacemaker for the heart if need be, and the Zoll will diagnose that, correct?
Correct.
Because we have that possible with the Zoll. It will pace, because defibrillation is not always necessary. Sometimes you can pacing, I mean, they're all over the place, so, This also is a pacemaker, which is also your heart stops. And if pacing or your heart rate is 20, this will keep you going until you get to the hospital. An AED will not. They'll shock you, but shocking is one treatment in many, many ways that can be used. So that's, I did look specifically for that, and it does do pacing. And SpO2 monitoring, CO2, when you're putting the tubes down, you're breathing, if your CO2 is too high, I mean, this monitors all that, where the AED does not.
Correct.
So,
The other part of this is the,
diagnostic and try to keep your bottom line.
this is the advanced, yeah, so this is the advanced, so what it's gonna also do is gonna allow future upgrades, so we're not gonna be tied down to a specific monitor, and then in 2 years, them go, hey, a new HA guideline came out, which sets how many joules of energy and everything else there is a shock, and now we're stuck purchasing a different one. So this is, the reason why I say the advanced thing, it allows it to be upgraded over the next 25 years.
Every member of the fire department will be trained.
Yeah, so this also, that with this purchase comes the training from Zoll.
I was going there with that. The training for this, is it just basic firefighter training?
Well, so you're talking about EMS related training?
No, just firefighters.
Yeah, it's basic firefighter training. You know, it's training that we would take, and that Zoll's going to provide to us.
Okay. And everybody be certified.
Career firefighters will be able to use this
Not as volunteers. Is that what you mean by that?
if they have the appropriate training.
I think where I'm going is, whenever I call someone who's trained who's gonna show up to use this thing, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I care. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's volunteer, permanent, I don't care.
One of the concerns I had about this, that was part of it, is, if I'm not mistaken, our charter says that we're supposed to be more focused on, at least the firefighting, we're not supposed to convert this into an EMT service. In other words, we don't provide, when I say EMT, transportation and that sort of thing, this piece of equipment is normally used for paramedic vehicles that are transporting, correct?
No, do you want to answer that, or do you?
It's used on like other firefighters. trucks.
We're the only fire department in the county that doesn't have this
We're the only
currently.
one, probably 3 counties that doesn't have it. That's what I was trying to figure
Yeah,
out. Okay.
yeah,
So this is for first response.
yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's what, I didn't know the equipment.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So, okay.
Yes, sir.
That was my only question that I had. I'm trying to figure out if it was only for paramedic vehicles, fire trucks, what the standard was in the industry. I just want to. Okay.
I'd like to amend the motion to officially nickname this device.
Thank you. And we're just getting one unit for our main truck. Okay. There's a motion and a second. I think we're ready to vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to move on to Police Department impound surplus. And I'm going to pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief Robinson has 14 vehicles that have been processed. Mr. Matthews reviewed the paperwork. The impound lot is full, and we need to move them out. So request a motion to.
Motion to approve for getting rid of 14 vehicles.
Second. All in favor? Aye. The next item up is going to be adding Florida Rural Water Association and consulting services to the approved engineer list for 22-23. I'm going to pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to recuse myself from this.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 additional engineering firms have provided packets of their qualification. If you approve it, they'll be added to the list and be included the next time we ask for engineers to do something for us. So we go on the same list as the 10 or 12 that we already have on the list. So would request a motion to approve.
So for discussion purposes, we've already voted, if I'm not mistaken, just going off recollection, to have Stantec, I think, do our do our CIP or our study, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the question is whether or not we can add them after the fact, or whether or not if we add them, then we have to go start over again there.
Wasn't that a piggyback contract that staff had on the agreement?
This is just adding them to the approved engineers list for any other things they might do. It has something to do with that.
Okay.
In other words, if the city manager needs to use them for a small amount of money to do something, having them on the approved engineers list will help.
No, I presume they were already on the list when we voted on the project. That's why I was trying to figure out what had happened.
I think that they needed to be on the other list when we voted, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
Okay, but I don't see any problem with approving.
With adding them after, I didn't know.
Because we haven't taken any action on it yet.
That was my question.
That was put on there with the presumption, I think, that they were on the list. But we're putting it on now, no action's been taken on the other things.
I just wanted to make sure.
Voted on it, and I think everybody thought that they were on the list.
Oh, okay.
I put it out to Mr. Duke, they're not, that's why I suggest you make two motions.
Okay.
Not motions regarding Stantec, just split it off, since Mr. McClary given a conflict.
see.
So why, what do you know, you can.
Because he can go to the water.
Yeah, make it just simpler, huh?
Okay.
Okay.
So-
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so once we add this, everything else that we've already voted on is good to go, and we.
Yeah, it's all fine. They haven't taken any, drafted any checks, done anything, with the other one.
I just wanted to make sure we don't have to.
No, it's an engineering that we thought they were already on the list, and it was over, 30,000, it wasn't a real lot.
Okay. Looking for a motion.
A motion to add part of Rural Water Association to the list of approved engineers for calendar years or fiscal year 22.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And motion to add.
Motion to add Stantec Consulting Services to the list of approved engineers for fiscal year 22.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. The next item here is going to be 22 PLN 89 City of Port Richey Resiliency Plan Grant Agreement. So I wanted to pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was the actual agreement between the city and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to perform the grant funds that were received to develop the resiliency plan. So before we can engage a contractor to actually write the plan, we have to be in contractual agreement with the state of Florida. We request a motion to approve authorizing signing the grant agreement document.
Motion to authorize the city manager to execute the attached agreement between Florida DEP and the city of Port Richey for the city of Port Richey Resiliency Plan Grant Fund. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to resource and ecosystems to sustainability, tourist opportunities, and revived economies of the Coastal States Act of 2012, Port Richey Waterfront Improvement Project Amendment. Pass that to, is that going to be Mr. Duke or Mr. Matthews? Mr. Duke for this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the rewrite, the amendment that council directed staff to make in the Restore Act project. If adopted, if approved, this amendment will go to the county and they will add it to their amended Restore Act plan. The basics of this as directed was to remove dredging from the Restore Act plan and include additional shoreline Cody River landing content. So that's what you have in front of you. Would request a motion to approve moving this to the county.
We've discussed this before. Yeah, I move to approve the Second Amendment to Restore and Ecosystem Sustainability Tourist Opportunity Revised Economic Restore Port Richey Waterfront Improvement Project, and authorize the city manager to submit the amendment to Pasco County for inclusion in the amended Restore multi-year implementation
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm exhausted.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I'm going to allow the general public, because I didn't allow them to speak before we voted, but I'll still allow them to speak after we voted on this item. Mr. Mueller, come on up.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive, 34668. What's going to happen with the property located across from the fire station with all the dirt on it? Isn't that related to dredging? Shouldn't this money be used to remove that and restore that property back to where it was to do something else with? I don't think we want to short-side the whole picture, but nobody has seemed to address the elephant in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is city manager review for discussion. What I was going to ask the council, because we've had a full meeting in terms of time, and I wanted to have some time when we could really sit down and discuss this and be kind of fresh.
I agree 100%.
And I was going to ask for a motion to move this to the next calendar that has more perfunctory things on other items, so we have time to really discuss this.
Motion to move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I agree. This takes some time and attention.
And then the next one I wanted to move to and put it out to next year sometime.
I make a motion.
So the next item is the selection process for our new legal counsel, and I'm going to pass that to Mr. Matthew for introduction. Mr. Dude.
I probably Yeah, it's just Mr. Dude. I think he's just looking for approval of the documents, right?
Yes, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page before we send out an RFP. And Mr. Matthew provided the documents that you have in your packet, but we have pushed it off to another meeting to finalize the process. If you're comfortable with the process, my intent would be to send a request for proposal out, advertising it in the appropriate places, the Florida League, the League of Municipalities, Mr. Matthew knows a couple of
Motion to go with it.
Second.
Actually, I really need a consensus.
Yeah.
Consensus.
I consent to.
I consent.
If you're good
It
with
looks like everyone's on board, so.
On board.
Perfect, thank you.
I'll proceed.
We're going to move on to old business. I'm going to pass any old business I have to another meeting just because of the
Got one more item, 16.
It was an addition. It was on the table.
Oh, I think 30.
Yeah, the city manager decided our agenda wasn't big enough, so we came up with another item. Even though
That's why we pushed his review.
In the future, if there's not enough tabs, you can't add an item, okay?
What's that?
Make that a motion.
What additional item?
It was,
Approval of collective bargaining.
CWA.
Oh,
The digital was sent out on Friday. We just didn't have a printed copy for you in your printed
I
packet.
have it right here.
so is this the approval of the
Yeah,
collective bargaining
I'll take
contract?
that.
Okay.
I'm sorry. CDA contract went to a vote of the members. They passed it. This is just formality. They authorized the mayor to sign it. Basically, it's a 2-year increase, 2% increase. It's a 3% increase starting, I guess, would be 11 days ago, I guess.
Yeah.
And also for next year. And everything else is what we agreed upon, and so we're ready to go unless somebody has some questions.
The only question is this everything we agreed on this?
Yeah, right, yes.
Okay, that's the only question I had.
Motion to approve the FY 21 to 24 contract agreement with the CWA.
Second.
This is one I'm going to open up to the general public just because I know that there were some folks here that were speaking earlier at some point. By show of hands, anyone like to speak? Seeing no hands, at this time we'll put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now we can move on to hopefully no old business, but old business. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second. Don't leave,
We still have another meeting, but all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye.